All right, welcome to Earful of Dirt Lineouts, and I've got Gordon Hanlon on with me today, and we're going to start a series first on rugby offensive systems to help the average fan take the American understanding of the game and maybe just the world understanding of the game, but also it's technical coaching is something I've been trying to find. So this is also for myself, and Gordon is kind enough to help us out. Gordon, how are you?
Oh, I'm really good, thanks. And I'm really excited and happy to be here. Because, like you said, it's technical coaching and really growing the game. And if we can do something where when people are watching MLR or something else and they start to recognize the trends or the shapes that we talk about, then it should enhance their overall experience, which is hopefully what we do here.
So, let's hear about your background in rugby.
So I'm from Ireland and I played rugby at a decent rugby school there. Never really coached or anything until I moved to America in 2009 and did a little bit, and each year seemed to get more and more involved in it. I spent some time with the Crusaders, so did the Crusaders in 2015, and then I took a and now I'm in a job here in Germany as the director.
Yeah. Awesome. So
yeah.
Before we get into shapes and strategies, we're going to discuss the modern rugby player and evolution of the game. So, Gordon, let's get into the evolution of the game before we move towards the intense technical stuff.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the videos and stuff. The game is dramatically changing every 2 to 3 years with the law variations. And some of the biggest ones have been around the breakdown, the tackle, and in the whole point is to try and make the game faster, to make a better spectacle, to not have piling into a one ruck and then getting kicked and churned out the back, So they're trying to make it a more athletic and a safer game. So with the changes of the laws, it has also brought about changes in players because the game is still newly professional. It's only 20 years or so. And how the players have developed, if you think about it from a technical point of view, their run, catch, and pass skills are vastly improved from 1 to 15. It's not just 9, 10, and 13 can pass the ball now. There is an expectation that the entire team can. And you have a tactical understanding with the influence of video analysis, exposure to different cultures as well in the internet, because the information is just so more readily cultures like these now platforms entirely. Education is psychological view. People want to attack. People want to have fun, and they talk about American football, how it's two sides, and the linemen don't get it. Dude wants to be involved because they want to. Want social media. This is what we like as people. We like to feel special. So they want to attack. They want to be involved. And there are some people who like doing the dirty work. That's for sure. But most of us want that fun of the game, And then physically, we're better prepared. Our diet, our sleeping habits, our water intake, is much better. So we are stronger, we're fitter, and we're faster. So all of these things have changed the game from what it used to be into modern athlete playing a different game. The number of substitutions as well, that has also impacted the game, whereas I'm not that old, but there was no substitutions back in my day. But, you can change almost an entire pack. Forwards aren't as tired, they're not as fatigued, and the spaces that they might leave aren't there anymore. So they've had to come up with ways of breaking down these spaces, I guess, has contributed to it.
That's interesting when it comes to forwards and stuff, because you see a lot of arguments again to people are talking about reducing the amount of subs and so to somehow reduce injuries because it would make forwards smaller. Whereas, my background's different. I'm like, why don't we just have a bench of 15? I would straight up, for me, I understand, once you sub a guy off for tactical purposes, usually you can't bring anyone back in unless there's an injury. So I get that. But you have some arguments from guys who aren't forwards. I see this very often. It's like guys who don't get in the scrum or just fans and don't play rugby at all. It's like, actually, let's just reduce the bench to 20 or reduce the bench to 19 or whatever, and call it good. And then the arguments for safety when something else happens, like that Wales crap the other day, or not the other day, but a few weeks ago. And I'm like, well, they were healthy, so you can't tell me a loose head prop is so much more technically different than a tight head prop, because I'm not saying, like, it's not that much different when it comes to your body control. Your bind may not be familiar, but there isn't that much of a safety issue, especially when Wales moves over their hooker to play loose head. Like, come on.
Yeah. If the thing with that is, if Wales needed to score points and they had a scrum, would the same thing have happened?
I would say probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Or if they, yeah.
So you're right. I think they are doing research into the output, but as I said, the game is so newly professional that we don't have a lot of data about how it really impacts.
Yeah, so talked about bodies, talked about technical skills. Let's move into our third topic, which is, the attack is pushing the boundaries, reacting defenses, and then vice versa with systems. And the biggest change, however, you've talked about since the mid-2000s is what?
So I really think there's been a big influx of rugby league coaches coming to rugby union, and they've brought their defensive habits with them. So one of the first ones is Sean Edwards. So Sean Edwards was a very, very good coach. He came to Wasps in the early 2000s, and he introduced the Blitz Defence, where normally there was a lot of jockey defence, there was a lot of drift defence, and Sean Edwards said, we're going to be on our feet, splits every team. And they had massive success. I think they won 2 Heineken Cups, they won 4 premierships with Wasps, and then he went to Wales. He was the defence coach of Wales, and they won a Grand Slam in 2008, and they only conceded 2 tries the entire competition. So the Blitz defence is, excuse me, is the entire defensive line moving forward into the corridor power, which is like the space between the attack and defense. And the idea is to prevent the attacking team gaining any ground by tackling them backwards, and then you're on the front foot through the breakdown. So that's the first one I think has made a big, big difference. And I say this because I'm Irish, but then the second one was Les Kiss with Ireland in the 2011 World Cup. I don't know if you remember it, but they introduced the choke tackle on a big scale against Australia. And it was
I don't, because in 2011 it was very hard to find rugby in this country unless you were at a bar early in the morning, and to watch. We had a team in college, but I was also at VMI, so going to school. So it's like they definitely weren't paying for, like the package to get the Rugby World Cup. And I definitely couldn't play hooky and go to the Irish bar and, watch, because I'd be out there, marching with my rifle in front of the barracks. So missed that one.
Yeah. But yeah, so Ireland played Australia in the World Cup. And the concept of the choke tackle is to get basically 2 or 3 men to the ball carrier. You're trying to get your one arm underneath his armpit, basically, and they just hold them up, and they create little mini mauls, and then they get the turnover. And it had been done before, but not to the extent that Ireland really, really targeted Australia in that game. Ireland won, and they had some success, but again, it comes from really, really aggressive line speed and having defenders on their feet. So defenders aren't just diving in, or they're trying to contest the breakdown with 3 or 4 or 5 people. Like, I watched some highlights of in Australia, and you just watch the breakdowns there. Even though it's only 14 years, it looks like they're playing a completely different game.
Yeah, I've people tell me to look at I guess if you can find the tapes, 1996, 1997, and watch what we've got now, and that's, I would say, to an extent, the similarities between in American football. You look at what they did 20 years ago versus what they do now is just completely different, and even the offenses that were the same, they still look way different. Like, it's much different in a start-stop game versus a fluid motion sport. But I would say the concept of looking how things are executed over that period is about the same, because it's just it looks different even though it's the same.
Yeah, and that's one of the good things. It is a fluid sport, and it's constantly evolving. And people talk about how we want to play like heads-up rugby, and we're not scripted, but there are things that you can do that help the situation. Everyone talks about the All Blacks; they just do the simple things. Well, yes, they do, but they're also very smart with what they do. They purposely manipulate teams.
I talk about how, try to explain it to rugby people, make it like when it comes to like bringing in other athletes. I was like, rugby is extremely complicated, and yet it's very simple. So by saying you can't bring in someone who plays a different sport because they've spent so many years doing that, I just don't get it, because you're trying, especially here, we're trying to grow the game. So we're trying to make it, you and I right now are trying to take all that complicated stuff and break it down and make it simple so that we can grow, our understandings of the game. And, systems, craziness, it is complicated. But yet, if you sit down and you break it down, it can be simple.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, use the All Blacks as an example. The World Cup final in 2015 against Australia, when they had Pocock and Hooper. Pocock and Hooper were phenomenal for Australia throughout the World Cup, and I don't know how many turnovers they were averaging a game, but the All Blacks, how they nullified it is in the lineouts, they threw to where Pocock was going to have to lift to contest the ball. So first of all, they made sure every ball was contestable, and then he would lift. So that would take him out of the first phase. Then they get the ball into the backs, and they would run straight at Hooper, forcing him to make the tackle. So you've taken the 2 best poachers of the ball, 6 or 7 seconds. And then they play their simple things. What they planned to do was very high. to us, but why did no other teams think of doing it?
That one I can't tell you about.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, I guess where was it?
Yeah.
So, where am I? Pardon the audience at home. So let's look at modern day defense, middle of the field.
Yeah.
It's like ruck in front and like how many defenders to the left, how many to the right, and how does that fit into the space on the field?
Well, so yeah, if you were to imagine yourself as an attacker, there's, let's say, a breakdown in front of you. Most teams these days, they're going to have, you look at all the defenders to the left, the defenders to the right, probably a 12 or 13 man wall you're facing. They may have the wingers dropped in a little bit deeper, the fullback's probably deeper, and the number 9 is in behind. That's your standard defensive shape, roughly. So when you think about space and how we're trying to attack, we see the space on the left-hand side and the space on the right-hand side from the last defender to the sideline. People think we need to get the ball there, we need to manipulate. But, and this is where we'll get better at it, but there's like 3 layers of space on a broad field. There is the stuff on the sides, then there's the space right in behind the defensive line, and then the third layer is behind the fullback again. Now, we're not really good enough yet to be able to attack all 3 layers at the same time. But Bowden Barrett is phenomenal 2 layers. His passing, his footwork and acceleration gets him left and right, and then his chip kicks and his kick passing game is able to put into that second layer of space. So how we do this is very important, because gone are the days where you can just hammer away at 13 defenders, because it hurts. It hurts, and we don't miss tackles. The increase of the substitutions, they're not fatigued. Footwork is much better, and teams are happy just to make your tackle, roll away. Make your tackle and roll away. It's kind of like, as a defense, they're happy to bend but not break. That makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, so for all you American football fans, they're happy to play cover 2 and bend and not break, give up yards and then finally take the ball away. Yeah. So, so basically, as you're saying, so teams are willing to, especially the All Blacks. The All Blacks are crazy at this. And, I would say I looked at the best film. I mean, All Blacks and Black Ferns basically play the same type of game. And you would see, you look at, the best way to look at this is when you see the All Blacks just going as, those games where they're up, where they just crush someone 50-0. They'll let people gain a bunch of meters, and then they just intercept the ball and score. And, like that Samoa game over the summer, the first Australia game in this Bledisloe Cup, that was in Sydney, I think. Yeah, in Sydney. And they go up like 50 to something, and then, they just sort of like press the brakes and chill. I mean, you don't really see like that level of competence in the back half when, Australia is able to score 20 points. But you saw, the All Blacks just let people gain meters, and then they just take the ball away and they score.
And 2 things from that. They say, so there was studies done into the more phases of possession you go through, the higher the likelihood of giving away a penalty. And the other one is, when the teams are most disorganized, is the transition from attack to defense. So like you said, you're right, they do make line breaks and finish their line breaks better than any other team in the world, and that's because they work hard at it. You're right, they're happy to take a phase here or another phase there, in order to get the turnover, and then it's gone. The ball is within 3 seconds. It's 30 meters away on the other side of the field. And that's one of the things that they do well, and teams are starting to get better at it. Like Ireland in this past World Cup, I think I saw the statistics. So they made almost as equal amount of line breaks per game as the All Blacks did, but they only converted 15% of it into points versus 60. And that's a huge difference. You know, if you get into space, you can find space, but you can't execute, then it's a problem.
So let's go into our need and ability to hold width on the pitch, and then how do you get around a blitz defense or create gaps to get in behind it?
Yeah, so that's the how these shapes came about. You know, defenses are bring so much pressure, and the spaces out wide. A simple forwards, you know, hitting midfield and forwards around the corner strategy is not going to be effective. So what teams have had to do is they've had to hold width, and that means that forwards have had to really, really stretch the field, because when you have one player on one sideline and the other on the other, then the defense cannot line up square. They have to be spaced out. So you've got space out wide, and you're also stretching the defenders more so than just running around the corner. And if you stretch the defenders, maybe they will miss an alignment, or someone might shoot out of the line, or the pace might be off. So there's a lot more gaps there if you can hold width of the field. So shapes and stuff were born out of this, basically. For example, we'll talk about 2-4-2 and 1-3-3-1, and then get into 1-3-2-2. And the main purpose is about keeping forwards in those 15-meter channels to stretch the defenders, because that's what teams want to do. Because there's only really two ways to beat this blitz defense. One is to get around it, and we're seeing it a lot more now, is to kick in behind or get an offload away, and that part of the game is really, really progressing in the last couple of years, and I think it's exciting. It's going to keep growing, and when we get to the next World Cup, I expect it to be much higher level than previously.
Awesome. And then moving forward, you know, you've just mentioned, you know, so shapes and phase play. We're going to quickly recap what we talked about. So our next episode, I guess, of this is we're going to talk about the 2-4-2, right? So Crusaders run 2-4-2 like crazy effectively. You guys could, I'm sure plenty of Super Rugby is on YouTube to watch. You can even look at the Lions tour stuff from this summer. I'm sure it's up there, all bootleg copies, of course. But there's tons of rugby to watch them play. What international team is running that kind of system right now that you can watch out?
A strict 2-4-2 in it, and there's probably no international teams running it at the moment. So international rugby, they're at a level where it's more transitional. So they'll play a combination of a couple of these shapes that we'll start talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's 2-4-2, like the Y, it became about line breaks and width, and it came to prominence, like I just said, with the Crusaders in Canterbury. Connacht in Ireland recently used it when they won the Pro, it was 12 at the time, 2 years ago. I know Bernard Jackman is another Irish coach. He was with Grenoble, and he's now he's in Cardiff, is he? Somewhere in there. I think I know they ran 2-4-2. And a lot of teams, it seems to be the most common shape that exists in the US, or at least when I was there a couple of years ago, because it's easy to understand and it's also very effective and easy to coach. So I probably should explain what it is. So by 2-4-2, what we mean is, and just for the forward, so there's going to be 2 forwards generally from the left 15 meter to the sideline. You have 4 in the middle and then 2 on the right 15 meters. And they're generally split up. The guys in the middle, or the core group, or whatever you want to call them, would be the 2 props and 2 second rows. And then you would have a combination of your hooker and then your 3 back rowers split into pairs on either side. And it really depends on which side of the field your set piece starts. So your hook, you're not going to ask your hooker, you play hooker, to throw the line out and then make it to the far side of the field. So you'll throw your line out and generally just wait there for the ball to come back with probably one of the guys that's jumping in the line out or a lifter, and then the other 2 back rowers will go to the far side.
Talk about something that's not explained in practice.
No, the reason why, yeah.
No, it's like, so you throw the line out. I've definitely run, like, after a line out all the way across the field because, like, no one knows what they're doing. And it's like, all right, now I just wasted, way ton amount of time. So, Gordon, yeah, we're gonna get into part 2. We're gonna go in depth on 2-4-2. I think that's when you are gonna be here over Christmas. If not, maybe right when you get back to Germany. In like
I'll be there. Yeah, exactly a week to the day. Yeah.
So in about a week, we'll get it flushed out for you guys, and we'll hit 2-4-2, and then over the next couple weeks, we'll hit 1-3-3-1 and 1-3-2-2. Yeah. So it'll be pretty awesome because I am going to be here like you guys, learning a ton of stuff, and also just it's for all the coaches out there that want more knowledge. We're trying to bring you guys more knowledge. So, thanks, Gordon. And we'll see you in a week or 10 days or something. We'll just figure it out.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah. For all those that missed episode 17, the show, the main show is off for 2 weeks. Because of your Christmas holiday, but we're going to put some content out there like this. And then I've got our full interview with Holden Youngert tomorrow afternoon. He's the St. Mary's scrum half. He was on the America's Pacific Challenge this summer, and he has signed with New Orleans Gold Rugby in the inaugural season for Major League Rugby. So got him tomorrow around 3 p.m. Pacific time. I'll have it all fleshed out on Twitter and on the site this afternoon. So check it out. Again, Gordon, thanks, and we'll see you in about a week-ish. So
sounds good. Thank you.